Hello, this is Stevie Coin here, broadcasting from Connecticut, home of the wealthy. Today, I want to talk about the blockchain and about Bitcoin and why it is not a scam. This is meant to be kind of an introduction to Bitcoin and to blockchain to people that are traders, that are financial analysts, that are regular people, that understand finance but may not understand computer, right? And think Bitcoin computers and think Bitcoin is a scam. So let's dive in. So let's talk about kind of what money is, right? Let's start there. So one of the theories of money, the modern monetary theory says that money is credit, right? It is a basically a transaction between two people, right? One person owes somebody something else, right? And then that's written somewhere, and there is a debt, right? And so basically, money is a way to pay for that debt, right? And that's the case. Money is basically a social construct. It describes the economic relationships between people since time immemorial. You can go back to the Roman Empire, to the Greeks, to the Syrian Empire before that. 3,000 years before Christ, you can go to India, you will find ledgers with money relationships and creditors, chasing people, to give them their money back, right? So, and breaking their legs and so forth. So that's what, in essence, money is, right? It's a transaction between two people written somewhere. That somewhere is called a ledger, right? So the transactions between people are written in a ledger. So who usually keeps track of that ledger? Who keeps the ledger? Nowadays you say like, oh, it's an accountant and this and that, but really, when you roll it up, it's the guy that has the biggest guns and the most powerful person. That's the guy that keeps the ledger. That's usually the government, right? Or in modern times, it's the banks, right? Since the Medici times, he got all the gold, and he got enough security guards to guard it, and now he was more powerful than the city-state kings of the medieval cities in Italy. So so for the most part, it's government and banks, right? Rich guys with guns. So the problem with the system is that the government cheats, the bankers cheats. When they screw up, the kings like to write off his debts. Whether it's a British king or a French king, whether it's a irresponsible government, they'd like to write off their debts. They'll print money, they'll adjust the entries in the public money ledger, and they'll try to get away with stuff. Same thing with the banks. The banks, if they screw up and they made investments and it didn't work out, they want to cheat. They want to change the entries in the ledgers to make sure things are okay, right? And that's what usually gets people outraged. The latest example was 2008. The masters of the universe in American banks at the time I was working at Goldman, they screwed up in various ways. They were insolvent, and then here came the government and gave them money and wrote off the debts, and that's that. Nobody, and everybody got pissed off, right? So again, this is the government and the banks changing the ledger, and people not trusting the keepers of the ledger, right? The official keepers of the ledger. So the Satoshi guy around that time decided, I could create a different system, one that's where the governments can't modify the ledger, right? So his system was to basically use computers, and the fact that computers can be connected in a network on the internet to change how a money ledger can be written, right? So instead of just the government's representatives or bank representatives running to the ledger, he said, we're going to pick random computers, or in other words, random people, to write in the ledger. And so if we pick different people every time to write to the ledger, and that basically selection is random, you can trust the entries in the ledger because not one party wrote them, right? As I said, like even government and banks, you can't trust. I mean, how are you going to trust any regular schmuck who is in debt and needs to get out of his debts, or wants to fund himself a fancy lifestyle, right? So his idea was basically we're gonna just keep changing the person who writes the next entry in a ledger, right? So the next entry in a ledger in computer terms is called a block, right? And the ledger is basically a chain, sequential chain of blocks, right? Hence, block chain, right? Um, so to select the person, to select who the next person that's going to write into the ledger, the next person who is going to produce the block, or in this case, the next computer that is going to produce a block, there are three different systems that can be used. One is called proof of work. There's another one called delegated proof of stake. And there is a third system called proof of stake. So Bitcoin and Ethereum use the first one called proof of work. A cryptocurrency called EOS uses delegated proof of stake. Also, the Binance Smart Chain uses delegated proof of stake. And the first cryptocurrency to implement successfully proof of stake is called Cardano, right? So let's keep these five cryptocurrencies in mind here. And so let's start with the proof of work mechanism. So how does that work? So when Satoshi, wrote the stuff, he said like, well, he's a British. We know who Satoshi is. It's Adam Back from Blockstream Technologies. It's important to understand that you have to be a highly skilled computer person to be able, to write the code that was written. Um, you know, so in any case, so Adam Back decided, and his five collaborators, mostly, Western British guys, cryptographers and guys that used to work for the CIA and the government and so forth. They decided that you need to spend money to basically, you know, you need to spend money to be the writer of the book, right? So you have to basically, there is an economic way to select who the next person is, and then basically you have to it's going to be a competition, right? Who's going to bid more, right? So the way they implemented that is they calculate some complicated puzzles. Your computer has to calculate a complicated puzzle, spend a certain amount of electricity, certain amount of money, and then basically that's how you pick it, right? Randomly. So whoever can pick it, whoever can spend more money, and is more industrious, they get to be the next guy writing in that ledger, right? So it's kind of a competition of who's the strongest, right? Um, which is fine, which is a fine way to do it, and so that's how Bitcoin works. You spend a lot of money, and you can get to be the guy that rides in a ledger, right? So the issue with Bitcoin is that basically it gets more and more difficult, right? You have to spend more and more money, right, to be a block producer, to be a miner. You have to be very creative with the equipment, and you have to do all kinds of things to become a miner. So this, from being a widely distributed network by a lot of computers right now, actually very few entities around the world can afford the specialized computer equipment to mine a Bitcoin block. So right now, Bitcoin is really kind of, there may be like, I don't know, 5, 6 entities actually that are block producers. I mean, you have to have a lot of computing power, and you have a lot of smart computer guys. I mean, who's going to be that? It's going to be Twitter, Jack Dorsey, Silicon Valley companies like, Google, that know a lot about computers, Amazon, Microsoft, the Chinese government, the American government, very, very big entities right now are the, large investors, that they've pulled money together. So Bitcoin has become basically the province of billionaires. You have to be a billionaire to be able to procure the equipment that rides in that Bitcoin ledger, right? In that Bitcoin blockchain. Um, so that's how proof of work works, right? The second consensus mechanism is called delegated proof of stake. So basically, the people you can kind of pick 20 computers that are trusted computers, right? For whatever reason, right? You can pick them and say these guys are the trusted computers, and they're the ones taking turns writing to the ledger. So the U.S. Currency, when it was created, they picked 21 validators, right? So it's not one, it's not two, it's not five. It's more distributed than it's more decentralized than Bitcoin it is today, but not by much. It's, instead of five entities, it's now 20 entities, right? And the rules to pick them are kind of unclear. The creator of the cryptocurrency gets to decide who these guys are, right? But basically, they take turns, and that's how this works. Um, so this is kind of a aristocratic system, right? Where somebody picks, computers or validators or entities that do it, that write into the ledger based on their own preferences, and that's that, right? So this is not really kind of what people have in mind when they say decentralized, right? Um, so it hasn't really taken off as a consensus mechanism, and now we go into the third one called proof of stake, which basically works the following way. So every person that owns the cryptocurrency can become a stakeholder, right, in the cryptocurrency. So they can stake their currency, their coins, and for that, the blockchain gives them the right to write a block. So instead of like having specialized equipment, any guy with a wallet can become a writer. Your computer can become a computer that writes entries into the ledger, right? So you pick people at random, and so long as majority of the participants that have staked their money agree, the system works. And basically, the idea here is, are more than 50% going to decide, going to decide against their own interest, right? Does that really make sense? So I can kind of understand it like 20% of the network, a minority, or 30% or 40%, is not happy with the status quo and wants to tank the network for whatever reason. But does it really make sense for everybody, for majority of people that own the network, to really want to make a decision against their economic interest, right? To tank the network? It doesn't make sense. Like, if they're not happy, they're going to leave the network, right? Or they're going to change the rules of the network, right? That's what the majority can do, right? So in a proof of stake system, it's kind of a more democratic system. It's more majoritarian. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's super majoritarian systems. In the Cardano cryptocurrencies, more than 70% of the people have staked their tokens. That means more than 70% of the computers out there are participating and writing entries in a ledger, right? So it's kind of a super majoritarian system. It's a very, very strong consensus, and and also to boot is very fast, right? So to summarize, we have three types of consensus mechanisms, right? Proof of work, delegated proof of stake, and the proof of stake. One is basically run by billionaires. Another one is run by aristocrats, whatever the rule of aristocracies are. And the third one is basically a democratic majoritarian rule, right? So which cryptocurrency is the right way to do it, right? I don't know what the answer to that question is. I think different people have different values, and they will decide based on their own values. Some people believe that a lot of people in America believe that the rich people should run the government and they should run the world, right? They firmly believe that getting rich is the pathway to running the world, right? That these people are the gods and they should be the masters of the universe. In other societies, they say, well, money is one way to measure success. Another way to measure is scientific achievement, military achievement, and so forth. So they have, more inclusive criteria of skill set to determine who rules the society, right? It's not just money. You have to have the knowledge of law, knowledge of, human rights, uh, you know, uh, knowledge of medicine, knowledge of various different aspects of society, in order to be a ruler society, right? So, these people pick, aristocratic. Some people believe that these rules are, based on, how many years has a family, how many generations has a family served, the state, successfully, right? In the French aristocracy, you don't become aristocrat tomorrow because you won a couple of victories. That's a beginning of entry into the French aristocracy, right? Like if you have two, three generations of winners, and your family has generated and continued its values to generate. Successful public servants, then you become a member of the aristocracy, right? So it's kind of a harder standard. I'm not saying that this is the best way to run a society, but that's kind of what people were thinking, right? And then the final way is obviously the democratic way. So you can see how different places, like different things. I mean, is any surprise that the billionaires, right? Like Bitcoin, where all the Novograds and all the billionaires out there, Elon Musk, they all like Bitcoin. Why do they like Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin changes the power over the money ledger from the government to billionaires, right? So they want that power, right? So Bitcoin allows them to gain that power. So they like Bitcoin, right? In China, on the other hand, they like the aristocratic system, right? They want to pick their own validators so they can do censorship of the money transactions, right? So they kind of, it's kind of delegated, right? It's different. It's better than their old archaic systems, right? But they still want to have control, right? They still want their own people in place to have control. So they like the delegated proof of stake. That's why the Binance Smart Chain is built using the delegated proof of stake, right? That didn't take off in the United States. EOS and Mike Novogratz invested in the U.S. That people here don't like it because it's aristocratic, obviously, right? So they didn't like it. So and the third one is like Cardano, the proof of stake mechanism that is democratic, right? So this is kind of this the first successful implementation of that was last year, right? So it's brand new implementation. It took him 10 years after Satoshi created Bitcoin to come up with a successful proof of stake model. They wrote the papers 5 years ago, but you have to write the code as well. That's the other thing you need to understand about cryptocurrencies, right? So I just kind of want to do a little sidestep here into my background, right? So I kind of been on my own for 7 years, having my own business as a financial advisor. But before that, I was a technical architect on Wall Street. I worked for Goldman Sachs. I worked for Royal Bank of Scotland. I've worked for Bank of New York. So I spent 20 years, 10 to 20 years on Wall Street in various roles, working for internal IT teams. And I know 10 computer languages and know how to deal with computers and so forth. So I have a good understanding of computers, and I also have a good understanding of finance. That's why I kind of want to give introduction, because a lot of people know finance well. There's a lot of people that know computers well, but the group of people that kind of knows both things is a it's just it's a smaller group of people, right? So I'm one of those people. Don't ask me about medicine, and don't ask me about biology. I know nothing about that, right? But I do know about the intersection between money and computers. So I understood, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies from the very first time I heard about it. I mean, in 2013. Um, the things are real. You have to understand that the people that wrote these things, that wrote the code, all of this code is written, all the cryptocurrency code, all the Bitcoin code, all of the cryptos out there that you see, they're all open source project. What does that mean? That means that the code is in a public place. Everybody can open it and they can read it and they can examine it, and not everybody can change it, but everybody can read it and see what it is. So normally code is kind of proprietary. People hide it. Microsoft doesn't show its code. Goldman Sachs doesn't show its code. The code is proprietary. They obfuscate it. They make sure nobody can read it, right? They think that's their intellectual property. In this case, these guys have done the exact opposite. The intellectual property is freely available for everybody to read. And by the way, to copy, you can go and you can copy the code, and you can do you can run your own Bitcoin, right? If you can find other guys to say, oh, your Bitcoin, you created your own cryptocurrency. By the way, that's what these guys, these scammers like Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash have done. They just basically took the Bitcoin coin, they made a couple of parameter changes, and they call it a different cryptocurrency, right? So long as there's computers there willing to run it, right, you have a cryptocurrency, right? So obviously, they haven't gotten as big of a traction as the original Bitcoin. The power and the size of the network is, basically how many people can you attract. So if you are the original thing, if you're the real thing, you will attract people. They're attracted to original thinkers. If if people determine you're a fake, you're not gonna get as big, okay? But these guys have made a lot of money. For fakers and for scammers. The Litecoin guy and the Bitcoin Cash guy, Roger Ver, they've made a lot of money, right? But if we take away these scammers, right? If we take away these guys that just copy the code, right? The people that wrote the original Bitcoin code, right, are world-class PhD scientists. They're world-class cryptographers, world-class computer scientists in the Wall Street and in the private industry. These are world class. This is world class science and world class technology that is put out there in the open, right, for everybody to read. And all of the cryptocurrencies subsequently that have original code in them, they're all public. Everybody can go, they can read them, they can examine. These guys, they write a white paper, which is a PhD level research in which they specify the system components, and then they go and they write code that fits the white paper. So they write the paper as a mission statement, and then they go write code to basically fulfill that, to make the product that fits that mission statement. All these guys are like, corporations, except for they're not incorporated, right? And they all live around the world, and there's no corporation. Their product is a cryptocurrency, and that has value. So, in a very bizarre way, these guys, they don't keep their intellectual property private. They keep it public, and they've gotten richer. They've gotten richer giving away their intellectual property. It is the most amazing thing. I mean, I was never kind of a big believer in open source, but the more it happens, the more amazed I am at how it has worked and all the wonders it has done. It's a wonderful thing. It's an amazing thing, right? And most importantly, it is not a scam. It's an incredible scientific accomplishment and accomplishment of humanity. And lastly, I just want to say one thing that distinguishes Bitcoin from basically any other software out there is that to this day it hasn't been hacked. Right? I mean, think about it. It's been around for 12 years and it hasn't been hacked. Now it is worth $1 trillion. Right? $1 trillion is $100 billion. Right? So if you sit around and you're a smart guy and you go read all the books and you read for 3 years all the books in the world and you figure out a way to hack Bitcoin, right? You can become a billionaire overnight. You go and you steal 1,000, right? We're not even talking 1%, we're talking 0.1%, right? That is $1 billion. So you go read for 3 years and you figure out a way to hack it, you can go and you can steal 1 billion coins. $1 billion in coins, right? You can become rich overnight. You can steal 10 billion, right? I mean, you can skip the whole thing, right? Where you're going and you're making a business and you're doing all kinds of things and you're taking a company public and you're running 2,000 people and you never sleep and you don't see your wife and all that stuff. You don't have to do any of that, right? Go read the computers, hack Bitcoin, you become the biggest billionaire in the world, okay? All the girls are yours, all the riches are yours, you can buy anything. Don't you think every smart computer guy out there, the smartest guy, Don't you think they're trying to hit all the guys in the CIA, all the guys in the Chinese military intelligence, all the guys in the US military intelligence, all the guys in the Russian intelligence, all the Iranian guys, all the North Korean guys, all the Saudi Arabian guys, all the European guys, the Germans, everybody is trying to hack the fucking thing. Everybody! The smartest guys! You hack the thing, you're a billionaire. You own the world. You take $10 billion, you become a political player. Who doesn't want to hack this fucking thing? They're killing themselves to do it. And they still haven't done it. The Russians, they hacked Microsoft Exchange. We have all kinds of hacks everywhere. The only thing that hasn't been hacked is Goldman Sachs, right? And JP Morgan. You will never hack it. I've seen the systems inside, they're unhackable. It's like you go in there and everything is done. You can hack it. Probably you can hack the CIA and so forth. They're all smarter than the Goldman guys. But none of these guys have been able to hack. Bitcoin is up there with these people. It hasn't been hacked. The code is public. Everybody can see it. Everybody can modify it. There is a massive financial incentive to hack it, and it hasn't been hacked. It's not a scam. Okay? It's a real thing. It has a purpose, and you need to learn about it. You need to lose your trepidations about it. You've had it for 10 years. It has stood the test of time. It's probably going to be frustrating. It has run up a lot. It has made a lot of people rich. All these guys that used to, all these idiots that used to, buy and sell drugs. All these drug addicts, right? They were buying Bitcoin to sell and sell drugs on Silk Road back 5-6 years ago, right? Now they don't know their money. They're millionaires in person. I know it's probably super frustrating. The biggest losers in the world. The biggest losers in the world, right, are millionaires of this fucking Bitcoin thing. It's fucking ridiculous, right? But it is what it is. The fact of the matter is, it's an amazing technology. It can be taken down, right? It sits on computers in China, in Saudi Arabia, in America, in jurisdictions that do not get along with each other, right? And a computer from any of these jurisdictions allows this thing to run, right? And to execute. For any of the cryptocurrencies. So it can be brought down. It's going to exist. You can't do anything about it. And the government actually is not even trying to do anything about it. They know they can't shut them down, or it's basically a waste of effort. I mean, if anything, right now it just creates a lot of jobs, right? There's a lot of new jobs. So they're definitely not going to stand in the way. They just need to understand how to do their government things. But it's a real thing. You need to learn about it, and you need to add it to your portfolio. I'm not going to tell you here what to do. You can come and subscribe on my website, and I can tell you exactly what to buy and how you can make a lot of money. But all I'm trying to say is cryptocurrencies, they're a real thing. They're a real investment class. They're going to become more and more important as the next decade unfolds. And you probably need to participate in it. And, you need to lose your skepticism. It's a real deal. And, you got to reconsider your participation. All right, that's all for now. I'm out.